And welcome back to the Life with Nick podcast. I'm your host, Nick Kleitch, and with me today is a gentleman that is really starting to crack some skulls out there, no pun intended, but a good guy to catch up with. We went to high school together, and we're going to be talking a little bit in the MMA world, which, if you know me at all, that's not something I know too much about, but we're going to dive into all that good stuff. So, Spencer, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, buddy. I'm sitting here with you, enjoying this life with Nick.
Yeah, it was good to get you down here. It's been a while since we last chatted, but let's kind of dive right in if you don't mind. One thing I was really curious about. So you had wrestled all 4 years of high school, correct?
No, I actually
you didn't?
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't actually go out my sophomore year because I thought I was going to get a job and be an outstanding member of society. Instead, I just bummed around, played video games, went to school.
That's all right. So it was your final 2 years then?
I did freshman year.
You did freshman year?
And 7th and 8th grade.
Gotcha. So you were somewhat familiar with wrestling and, competed at a high level.
Well, I don't know high level, but I competed. Yeah, I went out there and I gave her the old headlock. That's about it. I tried.
No, that's good shit, man. So when do you even get introduced to Jiu Jitsu and MMA? And I'm sorry, I shouldn't probably combine them. I'm sure they're two different things, but this is why you're the expert.
Yeah, this is why I'm here, buddy. So more so, yeah, I got involved in Judo because I was actually over at Brennan Meter's house one day on Kale Drive when I was about 10. And we were playing Def Jam Fight for New York. Classic, by the way. Great video game. And we were just playing that, and he's like, I gotta go to Judo. And I was like, well, what's that? He's like, well, it's kind of like some of the stuff we did on the game, which if you know Def Jam Fight for New York, I'm not going to dive in any further on that because that's a whole different topic. But great game. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Can I come watch? He's like, oh, yeah, I guess. So I went and asked my mom. We went. Turns out they were having a pizza party that night for like a kids appreciation type thing. And I walk in there and I'm eating the pizza. I'm not even part of the class. But I walk in and I'm eating the pizza and I'm watching them do like flips, and then they're doing throws, and then they're doing what they call niwaza in Japan. It's the groundwork. And they were doing all that, and I was like, this is pretty good. There's pizza in this class. So I went and started. That's honestly how I got started in martial arts.
That's so funny. You're over there just eating their pizza, watching them go about it.
Yeah, I know.
And then you're like, wow, this is interesting. Do I get to come here every week and eat pizza? And...
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, it was more so, that was fun and all. And then, you actually started, you're like, well, we don't have the pizza every week, and now I'm getting thrown.
This isn't as fun.
Yeah. It was definitely good, though. I'm glad that I was able to kind of branch out now, because by the time I was 7th grade obviously came, and that's when after football season, they usually try to get you out for wrestling. So that's when I went out for wrestling. Once again, me being me, not quite knowing what folk style or freestyle or Greco at that time even was. All I knew was Triple H, Shawn Michaels, John Cena, WWE back in the aggression era or whatever. And I got in the first class. I was like, where's the pedigrees at? I was like, where are these suplex? What's happening here? Why are you guys wearing these weird clothes? I was like, when did we do the mic stuff? When the promos happen? Yeah, once again, thrown into a world I didn't know. But it was,
That's super funny.
Yeah, doing that in middle school, that was pretty fun too eventually, because at that time I did have the judo experience. So so by then, I was like, oh, okay, it took just a few weeks to be like, all right, now I kind of get it. But I still only did one throw, and that was one move ever from 7th grade to 12th grade was the headlock.
Gotcha.
So, but
for better or for worse?
For better or for worse.
Yeah, but it worked, when you needed it to, and sometimes maybe not, but that's how she goes.
Yeah, lucky for me, they don't pick up on it as well in wrestling sometimes, because they're always worried about the singles and doubles. And I was usually up a weight class.
Okay. So,
senior year, I wrestled 220, but I weighed 195 the whole year. And so it's like hitting the headlock on them is a little easier if I, started judo at 10. By the time, you're 17, that's 7 years of practicing a move a lot.
Yeah.
Especially against wrestlers. Sometimes they fall for it if it's folk style.
Gotcha.
Not at the higher level, that's for sure.
Yeah. Still, though, you got to get into it somehow.
Yeah.
So this is, again, like a bonehead question for me, but what's the difference between judo and jiu-jitsu?
Nothing. Okay. But, yeah, they all originated from essentially one thing. And Pinkerton was kind of the name for it back then. If you know Boss Rutan, which you might not, but Boss Rutan's pretty deadly fella. Pretty cool, pretty funny guy. But they did Pinkerton back in the day, and that's where they used open hand palm strikes. You could do the knees, the elbows, you could do the knee bars, all that. Well, then, Judo now then kind of branched off of that at some point because some other guys are like, well, I just want to take this from that sport and do this, make it a new sport, essentially.
Oh.
And so Judo just became throws. So, like, if you would throw somebody and completely on their back, it was a knee palm, and the match was over. And then, obviously, rule sets, you're going to hear me say that a lot in comparison with different things, but the rule set in Judo is obviously going to be different than the rule set in, like, a wrestling or jiu-jitsu match.
Okay.
That's also what separates the sports. But essentially, all of them together are what would be, Pinkerton, I guess.
Gotcha.
I don't know
so that's like the umbrella. Now, is wrestling different than Pinkerton, or is Pinkerton like the
Pinkerton would allow wrestling,
the origin
like
of everything, basically?
Because then you got freestyle, folk style, and Greco, and I don't know too much about them, but I'm sure at some point they all were one and branched off. Because Greco would follow the idea of Judo with throwing, but it doesn't end if you get a complete throw in Greco. It keeps going, but you can only do like upper body throws. Okay. Can't attack the legs. Freestyle, which I have God no earthly clue at all. I've never done a freestyle match, but I have seen and heard that like you get points like you can grab a grip around both legs and you can like make a complete like almost gator roll like turn or something like that. It's like shoulder to shoulder like turn or some crap like that. You can accumulate points, so you can tech fall somebody pretty quick in freestyle if you just get that and just roll.
Okay, so if you get manhandled,
yeah, basically, yeah.
It's
and then
over.
Folk style is what 7th to 12th grade essentially is in high school. That's just folk style.
Gotcha.
So once again, all 3 different rule sets, essentially the same thing if you just combined them all together.
Yeah. So the rule sets really is what breaks everything up.
I would believe so. Yeah. Like a lot of techniques you see in jiu-jitsu now revolve around. It all depends. In no-gi, you see a lot more of a leg manipulation now, whereas like I'm sure I shouldn't say thousands of years ago, but yeah, for all we know, cavemen and barbarians were heel hooking each other. For all we know, but you do that, and like at some point, a cycle just kind of re-ups. It just comes back because it's like a circle, right?
Yeah.
So like at some point, they were doing a lot of leg locks. Like Boss Rutan was doing leg locks back in old school MMA, Pinkerton. Before like anybody else, essentially.
But now, are they doing more leg locks?
No, leg locks are a huge thing now. Not necessarily in MMA because people get better jiu-jitsu. Back then, they didn't understand the grappling near as much as we do now, obviously. Yeah. So like a lot of people kind of study that same concept of grappling. We're just going to refer to everything as grappling.
Gotcha.
So that's what it is. Like wrestling, all 3 of them: judo, jiu-jitsu. There's catch wrestling, sambo. All that is just grappling. It's just grappling.
Yeah.
So like when you throw just grappling in general, a lot of people, depending on where they are in the world, they're going to learn just different aspects of the same thing.
Okay.
And thanks now to social media, you should be able to learn everything essentially.
Gotcha.
But it's always evolving. Like some people come up with new ways, basically, to fold a human inside clothes is basically the idea behind it. Like, how can I make this guy want to say uncle? Like, it hurts so bad he needs a tap. Like, I'm done, it hurts,
Yeah.
That's what essentially the evolution of the sport is.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah, it is
cool.
Funny.
Cool.
It is
funny.
Because then you got, and it's funny too, because you see people like what they would classify as Revenge of the Nerds type of guys, the nerdy guys. And it turns out some of those guys are some of the most deadly people in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And you wouldn't think it because you're like, that guy's just walking down. He's got his little pen protector, his little glasses. He's walking down the street. You go to bully him. He does a flying arm bar and busts your arm. You're like, that's what I get for being a dick for no reason. You know what I mean? You don't know who out there is doing stuff. Yeah. Because now it's 2024. It's obviously a lot different than 2004. Right. Like when everything first started coming about with MMA and all that. And honestly, like I got more excited in MMA around UFC 100, and that's when Brock Lesnar was fighting, I think, Frank Mir, and Michael Bisping was fighting Dan Henderson, I believe. And they called him Hendo, and he hit a vicious overhand right on Bisping, and Bisping's never been knocked out yet. And he just gets flatlined, falls like this. He's out. But because they had such a heated rivalry going up to this, it was crazy because then Henderson comes down with a flying elbow to him already unconscious, and he just lays into him one more time before the ref finally got in there to stop it. And you got to think, obviously, back then, this is what they thought, it's a blood sport, essentially. Right? These guys, they're just out there to make the money basically for bashing brains, and essentially was what it was always thought of. But seeing that even at that age, I was kind of like, oh, I gotta try this. yeah. I'm like, wow, that was awesome. And then turns out I hated getting hit. I didn't like it, so that's why I grappled. But obviously, grappling's a big factor for MMA in general. Like if you can grapple efficiently, effectively, and know how to make the body move without having to, sometimes exert as much energy, or sometimes, taking the least route, what word I even want to use, resistible, the least resistant route, trying to find a way like that to get to a better position, or do something like that, you're gonna have a pretty good already stable for MMA. So it's like, that's what really helped. And then by the time I was 24, I started doing more of the boxing and all that.
Okay.
So that's when I finally got more into it. So like I started MMA in general pretty late, honestly.
Yeah.
And now just trying to turn pro October, 30 years old. Like, so it's like I'm already well behind a curve that left me a while ago. But if I do everything, fairly well, train right, start eating better, obviously, if I do things like that, I could go another 6 years at it, hopefully at a higher level than I am now.
Right. But the thing that's different that I always like to point out is like right now, mentally, you're as mature and locked in and ready to go as what you were as a younger man.
Oh, yeah.
Because like as a younger man, you have the stamina and the strength and everything. But
I still got that stamina.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. If you're going to be doing what you're going to be doing here coming up. But it's just interesting how sometimes the youthful energy, that doesn't matter when you're fighting someone that actually mentally is stronger and knows like, okay, how do you do some of these things more efficiently,
fighting a guy that's, mentally strong is obviously always tough. And sometimes, it definitely helps with the experience in general, because then you can see how mentally strong that guy is and how strong you are. Like if you're already in there and you can eventually see a spot or a moment where it's like they broke or they break, like, and for, certain styles, it's really bad. Like some styles, like if they see that, like if I'm watching you and I see a moment where it's like if I hit you with something, or if we're even grappling and there's a moment where like I get a good takedown or something, and you can see it, hear it, feel it, it's like, something like that, or the eyes just kind of, they just do something real quick compared to the focus you would have, and you just notice, you're like, oh, okay. Now you're getting tired. Now you want to be tired? Not because then it's to some people take offense to it. That's just how they mentally get ready themselves. They just take offense to, like, you don't think I'm good enough for you to go hard enough again? Like, things like that. And me, I see it. My usual view of it is like, oh, nice. I see you being cool. Now you gotta go push hard. I kind of do like that. I'm kind of like a Neanderthal, kind of in a sense, like go. But to me, when I see something like that, usually that's why with the stamina, like you mentioned, like for some reason now after doing it for so long, now it's just mentally in me. Like I need to see that, because like you're saying eventually that stamina and that usefulness, it's gone. It's just gone. It's just what it is. It just happens. So, but
sorry to cut you off, but like, you think if you are in the right shape, both of these guys that you're coming in here as, they're trained as much as you are.
Oh yeah.
So everyone's got the initial burst.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming, is it 3 or 5 rounds, whatever, later and later in the fight, that's what's like, who's got more in the tank?
Usually, yes.
100%. Who's more tough, who can strategize, and
who's going to change up their game plan if the original game plan's not working. That's usually why you have your cornermen and everything like that, because they can see from an outside perspective, like, hey, because sometimes you might be, you're too focused sometimes. Right. Like I'm saying, a Neanderthal, like sometimes, you get caught in that moment and you go. Like, I can feel it, blah, blah, blah. But for all you might be getting set up because, you know what I mean? Like, that's strategies play thing, it's human chess, essentially, right?
Right.
You a Harry Potter fan at all?
I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I know quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit.
I know enough.
If Emily listens to this episode and I say that I'm not a Harry Potter fan, she'll beat my ass. So. Anyways,
there's in Sorcerer's Stone, there's a scene in the movie where Ron is being the commander of these chess pieces. Well, in Harry Potter, the chess pieces move. They actually move on the board, which honestly, it's like chess for dummies, because if you don't know how the chess pieces move, then obviously it'll just show you. Anyway, that's beside the point. Love this scene still. And that's essentially to me what like Jiu Jitsu or even wrestling and MMA essentially is. It's literally like that Harry Potter chess. The pieces are moving. They're doing something at one point or another to where it causes a reaction or an action, things like that. It's honestly physics too. Look at it. It's got everything involved, right?
Well, it's not as simple as it looks.
No.
There's so much more behind the scenes than what somebody would, pay attention to. One thing I'm curious about, though, is like in football and other sports, you can kind of decoy, certain plays or set up certain plays to hit the home run. Do you do that, or is that more of like you're risking too much to try to like put a decoy out or a fake move or something like that?
Oh no, you're trying to do that a lot probably.
Okay.
Feints are a big factor because like you're using because you got to remember like football or even baseball or basketball, a lot of them are team-centric sports essentially.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So obviously, even though let's say, you're doing your part on the team, obviously, and you're doing great. Randy Moss against the Dallas Cowboys all the time. 3 catches, three touchdowns, like 160 some yards.
Yeah.
Whatever. Very efficient is essentially what that is. But let's say, the rest of the Vikings weren't, which I think they won that game, but if they weren't, something faltered on like 3 other guys, they lose.
Right.
Whereas now it's, it's one-on-one, and a lot of it comes down way more like, you're going to have to feint. You're going to have to take that risk because you don't have anybody else to rely on to maybe pick up the slack.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? If I'm slacking, I'm dying. It's essentially how I usually look at it too. It's like the cage is locked. I'm in here with you. Jiu Jitsu matches, sometimes, at a certain point, when I'm warmed up enough, I kind of get that mentality. But Jiu Jitsu matches is, I'm more out there for the fun, trying to, learn new things still, trying to try out things I've been working on, which sometimes doesn't always go well because and even with that, in the cage, to me, it's a lot different because, you're locked in there and you're essentially, sometimes that blood sport idea, I want blood, it's like, it's kind of in there, but now it's more like, who's better? Like, am I better at the overall aspect of this sport than you?
Gotcha.
Like, did I put enough planning into this? Did I do enough things? Did I prepare enough? All this. No, essentially, you have your team in the gym, but once you're in there, it's just you and that guy, and the referee, I guess. But you're not going to turn around and whop the ref. But it's one-on-one. It's gladiator duel essentially.
Yeah.
Which feints are going to be to set up the home run. They're going to you got to do something.
Gotcha.
You're not going to want to rely on the next guy to hit the grand slam.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is quite a bit of like moves to set up.
Oh yeah, a lot of different moves. So many different moves. Like you can throw like what's called a 1-2, just a lead jab and then a straight. Or a cross straight, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different names for everything because people use code words all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just basically a boom, boom. So, like, there's a lot of times when people do something like that, if they go boom, boom, and then boom, boom, and then you're thinking, oh, obviously they're going to probably go boom, boom again. And they go boom, and you go to, like, do something different, and then they just go boom because they didn't go boom, boom, and they just went boom, boom. It's very subtle, but, like, a little moment like that because, you're trying to be heightened. In a sense, right? You're locked in the cage. Like you're heightened. Yeah. So you see that little twitch, that little movement, you might be like, oh, I got to do this to defend. And, something happens. But with kicks, the twist of the hips, using your body, your core down there. Like Muay Thai guys are very good at, kicks in general. They're really good at them. And they're really good at turning those hips and creating that force and that power. Some people might say they lack somewhat of the hand power. Their hand speed is usually pretty good, but they don't have as much hand power, which I would probably disagree with that statement because once again, it comes down to the hips and the rest of the body. It's not just the arm.
Gotcha.
So all that using to feint everything, it'll set things up because then it's kind of like a dance, right? Your foot placement is very vital to the next step, obviously. What was it? There's an old song back in middle school everybody would dance to. Can't remember. Cupid Shuffle, I think, maybe. Yeah, something like that. And obviously you got to know the song to know the dance. And then once you get that all down, you can just literally go through it. Well, it changes. The dance changes, obviously, when you're fighting or anything like that, because this feint might cause him to do something. And then let's say you try that same feint 2 engagements. We'll just call engagements where they clash and then they back out, clash, back out. 2 engagements later, you try to do the same feint. Well, now he reacts different because he knows you're just feinting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's like I'm saying, chess.
There is a very high level of complexity to it.
That's why the pros they do 3 5-minute rounds. So essentially it's 15 minutes. You can be locked in there with that guy. You can learn a lot in 15 minutes if you watch and pay attention.
Well, and so you as the fighter, but also I'm assuming it's got to be your team that's paying attention to
it. Your corner too, because like I think in the pros you get 3 cornermen now. In the amateurs it was 2 for title fights. I believe it was 3. But in the pros I think you get 3 in general.
Gotcha.
And you got one guy doing the main coaching, you got one guy watching your opponent, and then you got one guy kind of watching the clock of the time.
Gotcha.
Essentially is what you would like.
Okay.
And
that makes sense though.
Yeah, so like a relay,
Yeah.
Like you got this guy watching the clock and the time the best he can, and then the second tier guy that's watching the opponent would get relayed, hey, you got this much time left. And that guy, as he's watching the opponent, trying to find those moments, those chinks, those nicks and knacks that you can try to chip through and all that.
Yeah.
And then you got the actual coach obviously doing all that, so it just relays up. So then the actual coach will give, he's like, hey, you got 3 minutes left, you know what I mean? Obviously, certain camps, whatever, they have their own ways of doing things. Maybe they're all just in there watching and, just give out advice when they can. But there are setups to things like that. Like, some people, it's their livelihood. It's what they have to do to survive, too. Like, some people are like that. From, a guy, Charles Oliveira, I suppose. He was one of the, they call him the Bronx. I'm not quite sure what that means in Brazil, but I'm assuming it's like kind of like a favela-like area where he kind of grew up. Maybe he didn't have the best conditions and all that, but he built himself up and eventually became a UFC champion.
Right.
So it's like, people like that their out was MMA. Their route was prize fighting, as people would call it. Like, they took the time to, because they had nothing else. So, they wanted it. And they had the opportunity to just train. Eventually you're going to be seen, right?
Yeah.
So it's like things like that. And, it's a game changer. So their team is obviously going to be centered around trying to, hey, how can we get you to win? Like, how are we going to make you win?
Yeah.
That's why they have those, setups of, the time guy, the guy watching that guy, and then the main coach right there.
Gotcha.
Some people do that. And that's, like I said, it's their livelihood.
But the main goal of all of that is being able to, everyone has their own kind of part with the fighter to help strategize to give you the best possible outcome.
Exactly. Just like any other sport, really, right? Football, you guys all practice. Baseball, everybody's practicing together. The only main difference is now that when, we go to war, like the old tournaments for any kind of sports, hey, we're going to war, what I mean? Because it's one side against one side. Now it's just you and that guy. Your team's now outside of the battle arena, like, hey, buddy, you want to throw me a boat here or something? I need some help. Case lock. You can climb over it. That's very illegal.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's very illegal.
Hey, you can't be doing that. So it's like, you got to have that thing, too. Like, when you get in there, like, you need to understand. You're being locked in there. Like,
this guy.
Yeah, this guy wants to probably, it's an exaggeration, but, he wants to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, some people think of it like that. Like, hey, we just got locked in here. One of us has to walk out.
Yeah.
If we both don't walk out, well, then at least I know you're not walking out. You know what I mean? Things like that. Some people are like, either I'm walking out or neither of us are walking out.
Yeah, which is a little scary, but I suppose that would raise the stakes a little bit.
Yeah, that's why it does.
That's such an interesting point, because I was going to get there at some point. I was writing down some of these questions in my head, but what is your mental right before you step in there? I mean, are you going through something that you routinely go through, or how do you kind of get to a place of meditation of like, hey, right now, like, burning the boats, this is it. This is for what we're doing. I'm just really curious about that.
That's a good question. That's the question that probably gets asked by a lot of guys, and everybody has a different answer, I would say.
Yeah.
Usually it falls along the same thing of, confidence and ability, things like that. And I'm gonna be honest, man, all I think is anxiety, fear, the ability of disappointment to fans, things like that. All that's running through my head, like, from when the back getting all handed up, like, things like that. It's like, am I actually that good? Am I good enough to do this? Like, if I lose, is this it? Like, if I get brutally knocked out and my family sees it, like, is that going to impact me? Like,
wow.
All of this is running through my head, right?
Yeah.
All of this. And it's just like, I'm getting taped up, all this, and getting a little anxious, all that. And then, sometimes, like, all the way even up while I'm warming up, like, until, like, and obviously now I'm towards the end of cards now. Like, I'm not, the first or second fight anymore. You're on the end of the clock where the night just keeps going.
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes by 9:30, I might finally get to fight. And I've been there since 4:30.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it goes.
Holy shit.
So it's like, all right, finally, now, I'm here, okay.
Get the opportunity. And
yeah. And now it's like your music hits. And then sometimes, if you pick the right song for yourself, not one that you think, oh, this is a popular song. You need to find. I played some weird songs that get me pumped up, all right? I had my amateur debut, I came out in a raincoat, a yellow rain jacket coat with my muck boots, and I played Raining Men. It's raining men. Yeah. You know that song?
Yeah.
Yes. I came out to that. I won, but
it pumps you out.
It pumped me up because it was my version of Bodies by Drowning Pool. Let the bodies hit the floor.
Yeah.
It's raining. Yeah, come on, who doesn't get that?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's how when I heard that song, that's how I took it. Like, oh yeah, it's gonna be Raining Men.
Okay.
But it sounds weird, but it's like
going back to what we were talking about. So there's a lot of nerve feeling, anxiety before. but once you hit
once
that walk-up song,
once that walk up song comes and you're finally getting in that cage, you know. And to me, it kind of depends too. If I'm first in the cage, you know, it's a little different because now I gotta listen to his walkout and all that. You know what I mean? Now I gotta try to focus on the sense that I know I'm about to go to war with this guy and walk out. Whereas if I walk out second, to me, like I now get my pump up song and my walkout to now finally get truly ready.
Okay, so you are honestly kind of waiting
essentially
for that timing of your moment to lock in.
Yeah, because then.
Sorry to cut you off, but it sounds like coming out second is a little bit of an advantage.
I would like to think so.
Just because
to me, yeah, for sure. Just because, yeah, you can get that moment now to listen to your song. You don't have to worry about the other guy coming out. You're it. You're last. You're
right.
This is it. Like, there's nothing else other than introductions after this, you know? But usually for me, it's always once we're finally both in there and they started introductions, that's when I just kind of
lock in.
Yeah, I was locking and zoning on it.
Kind of like, hey, all of this moment's led to here.
Yeah.
There's no way out between me and this guy, and it's that fight or flight of either he fucking
either he fucks me up really bad or I fuck him up.
Yeah.
And some sorry to mention too, because some people actually, you know, it's a gamesmanship to them, like they like skill for skill, you know, things like that, and I don't mind that. I love having a great war in there, but honestly, like I want to try to take the least amount of damage as possible because I want to be able to keep going. I don't want to also, like, you know, that's also what makes it nerve-wracking, but like it's just better career-wise and financially, I'm sure, to take the least amount of damage as possible 100%. In an MMA fight, clearly, right? But at the same time, like, you know, if that guy's able to, withstand any of that, or we go all 5 rounds, you know, they get a much more, you know, respect to us. It's like, you just went 5 rounds with me, like, and I went 5 rounds with you, like, we just went through something, like, you know, and that's kind of where the camaraderie now comes, because essentially it's, you know, you can come in with that mentality when you lock in, like, hey, it's kill or be killed. But sometimes during the match, you know, like there's little things because it's literally comes down to a skill still, right? It's not what it was before, like blood sport, right? It's not essentially what it is anymore. You may have that mentality getting in there, but then once you're in there and you're going skill for skill, you know, things like this, like that was a great move to my move. This is becoming more chest. Yeah. You now start to build that thing of like, you know, it's like, you know, how I got to do this, I got to go back and forth, and you're thinking as you're going, and you know, if let's say you go the whole match, well, now you two have that, you know, camaraderie, and you know, it's something you built within that 15 minutes with each other.
Yeah,
going skill for skill. You guys may have talked this match up all week or something, you know, all the trash talk, all this blah blah blah, whatever. But neither one of you could finish the other. You guys gonna, you know, that proves something. Like, oh, you know, that was awesome, it was fun. Yeah. Or if it was a one-sided dominant match and one guy just didn't show up, then it's a little more like, oh, well, you know, kind of sucks, but whatever.
Yeah. But okay, so during the fight, it sounds like if you are kind of getting matched up with each other all the way through, that there's like some respect there of okay, I know we came in here with a certain intent, but we're walking out. We're both trying to walk out of here as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, versus like you were saying, blood fighting, which is like truly warlike.
Some of those guys do exist.
I'm trying to literally end your life, which is to me really scary. But there was an interesting, and the reason I get so interested about this is because so many people in their everyday lives, and you know, like you've listened to the podcast a little bit, but like they're just not getting to the level of being in a fight or flight situation. No. You know, that's so foreign to people. And so, like, I just imagine, you know, instead of someone just randomly coming up and pushing you around, you know, that might get you in fight or flight. But, like, there is a specific place you go that you signed up for that you're like, all right, we're going to do this. And I can only imagine the roller coaster of emotions that you go through.
Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster. It's essentially like you go up there, you know what you're signing up for, and then right at the last moment of getting shoved off the ledge, like, wait a minute, no! Yeah, you're like, and then you get shoved off, and you're just like, well, we're here. Better grow wings.
Yeah, better grow wings, or otherwise I'm going to get fucked up.
Yeah, otherwise I'll get kneed right in the nose. I don't have good health insurance.
Oh man, you should now. That would be something that'd be a good thing to have. But so with that first couple moments, you know, you're locked in now. You got your song coming in. Like, is there like maybe after that first, you know, hit on you or takedown on you? Is that when you kind of settle in, or how do you get settled in as quickly as possible? Because obviously both guys are so revved up. Yeah. That can lead to get knocked out quickly. Yeah. You know, how do you kind of get into your game as quickly as possible?
I mean, I don't like to try to come out. I mean, I'm still pretty revved up, but I don't like to come out just trying to, you know, you don't want to enter the gas tank right away, I guess, in a sense, you know, Because if that guy can withstand that barrage of 2-3 minutes, and you're tired with 2 minutes left in the round, like that could be a game changer already.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I always do this. Not a lot. You know what? You got to play until you get punched in the face.
Greatest quote.
Yeah, you got to play until you get punched in the face. And
Mike Tyson.
more often than not, my plan's always, like I said, I'm thinking a lot usually. So like by the time I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should try this or this, and I get punched once, I'm like, oh, now it's just go time. Now he's got to go. You know what I mean? Usually it does take me getting hit once, twice, mainly once, to realize, oh, I am still in this. Like, we are here. We are doing this.
Because the reason I bring that up is in football, for me, I always needed to just get either hit once or hit somebody once, and then it's like, okay, now we're in.
Yeah, because it gets your body to now really understand, like, because you're amped, and that's what I'm saying. You don't want to have that adrenaline dump from that amp because you're, oh no, I gotta go through. Oh, let's go. You know what I mean, like that. You don't
then get knocked out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or you get taken down, submitted, because you don't have any arm strength left, whatever. You know what I mean, things like that.
Well, and this is coming from a guy that doesn't know much about MMA at all, but that's one thing about McGregor that I always thought was interesting is he was so able to get the other guy in a position that he didn't need to be in, maybe over revved up or wanting to take him out, that he would just find that way in the first round and just chip him, and take him out or knock him out,
Prime McGregor definitely had a way of being a lot more motivated, that's for sure. But other than that, like he had the great ability of his footwork and his speed and his precision were usually pretty good. Timing is usually pretty good too. But being able to add all that together to a guy that was actually seriously motivated at that time, like it's going to do wonders. Like the training methods and regimens he would do, obviously that helped him out. And he is kind of another guy that at some point came up from nowhere, and that was his livelihood. Like that was his way out of where he was. He took it and ran with it, and he had a lot of support for that. So like that definitely, McGregor was a good example of like using that his moniker of himself in a sense, like trying to upset the other guy, get their emotions involved.
Well, he would play such good mental warfare that they would be so beside themselves,
and they would get out of themselves,
and then he would knock them out, and then there's nothing worse than getting shit talks to and then getting knocked out.
And then the guy being humble afterwards. Usually he was fairly humble for the most part after some fights.
Well, later part of his career is when he was just kind of outlandish and whatnot. But you got to give him a lot of credit. He took the sport to a whole nother level.
He did.
Great showman and whatnot.
Because now you can look at it too, like guys like Sugar Sean O'Malley. He's a champion for the bantamweights, and like you might just know him based off of his brand in general. Sugar Sean, you know what I mean? But like you look at that'd be one of those guys you're gonna see him down the street. He's looking like a goon, just walking like this. Well, that guy could probably kick the crap out of you. You know what I mean?
Literally.
I mean, it helps being like 6'2" and being able to weigh 135 or whatever it is he fights at. Yeah. But it's like, jeepers, man.
Right when you think you got him figured out.
Yeah, exactly.
But so real quick on that, so he is a champ now, right?
Yeah, Sugar Sean O'Malley is, I believe, the bantamweight champ at 135.
And if I remember right on social media, I think he not called out Connor, but he was like, hey, Connor, I think I can fuck you up now. Yeah. Which is, I think, really cool because Sugar Sean probably watched the young McGregor and learned a lot from him. You can't hate on the grades, the whole time. But go ahead.
That goes back to that marketing thing, like when we were talking about that Craig Jones Invitational. Marketing themselves. And that's exactly what Connor was doing through his whole time coming up. He marketed himself. He bet on himself, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, he bet on himself, marketed himself, made him his brand. Whether people like it or not, doesn't matter because enough people liked it to make him rich. You know what I mean? So it's like, it worked out for him. So that's good for him. He was able to market himself and do that. And then, like we were talking about too before, like the generations down below that now, better for worse, however you think his antics are, wouldn't say some of them are the best livelihoods to go by, but at some point, some people, they see this. And then if they actually hear, the backstories of like guys like that, they're like, oh, he actually came from nowhere. Granted, once he got there and then he kind of went off the rails a couple of times, kind of came back, went off the rails, things like that. That's totally up to the next generation on their own choice because they get old enough and mature enough to understand like what they should not be trying to do. Yeah. Marketing themselves. Like it's, but some people, they just enjoy that lifestyle that Connor has, and that's, that's them, that's whatever, that's fine. But that platform he set and gave is still there for other people to now brand themselves, market themselves, value themselves in a sense, to now take MMA and now use that as their platform. Like OnlyFans, basically, right? Hey, I'm in the UFC. I might have to start an OnlyFans too. What's the matter? You know what I mean? They got a brand. And honestly, they could just use OnlyFans to do training videos, really.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's just part of the brand.
Exactly.
Well, what's conclusive is that he set the tone for the sport, no questions asked.
Unless Chael Sonnen was also
he was an incredible shit talker and also an incredible fighter. One of my favorite little bits on him is, I can't remember what he was talking shit on someone about, but he goes, "Oh, your rib hurts? Yeah, that's because it's inside a coward." He goes, "That's the same problem your arm and your feet have. They're attached to you." You know, just a bunch of shit talking like that.
And that's probably honestly where Conor McGregor took some of his notes. If you think about it, like that, and it's like, and that's what's cool, because you can almost see the lineage down the line of, like, in the sense of, like, you know, this guy started it in a sense, and then Conor, and you would think as generations evolve, go down below, like, or further and further, they should be getting better, essentially, as far as martial arts would go, because new things are being added in a sense. So the skill, like, you would think by now Sugar Sean should have the skill set to beat Conor. But the problem is, obviously, Conor still got that, you know, wily vet stuff. It's not like he's too far off of skill wise, probably, if he just got back in there and trained more. Like, it still could probably be right there. And, you know, it could be something that could happen, and it's actually, like, you know, it'd get people excited. Because you can almost bet those two are going to sell that fight.
Oh, Conor sells every fight.
Exactly.
The only thing I was disappointed on with him was when he had, I don't know if he broke his ankle before, or he wasn't fully healed against the second or the third Poirier fight. I didn't like how he kind of leaned on that towards the end, because he talked a lot of personal shit to Dustin.
And then he goes in there and that happens.
Yeah.
And then even as he's sitting down with the broken ankle, still talking mad smack.
Yeah. It's like, dude, how much?
Yeah, at some point you gotta go, hey man, you might as well we can see it now. Like, don't let this actually be you. Like, don't be your character.
Absolutely. Exactly. Well, the same character that you built that was so well respected is going to be the same guy that turns on you. Because if it weren't for that referee, Dustin could have actually fucking killed you right there.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And he should know that better than anyone, because he did that to so many guys.
But, exactly.
Well, I want to get back to fighting here, and you're getting into fighting at about, or not into fighting, excuse me, but like the build up, and let's talk about just amateur fighting a little bit. So I assume, like other sports, there's not a lot of money there, and you're just kind of trying to make a name for yourself. So, like, talk a little bit about how you work through that process, because I think that's important.
So, you know, there's a debuting amateur usually. It probably varies by states, I'm sure, because they all have their own athletic commission. And it was mainly, like, I'm pretty sure if you were a debut fighter, you usually had to fight somebody, or they would at least have to approve of an opponent, essentially.
Okay.
But more than likely, it was like you'd have to fight another debut guy, or you'd have to fight a guy with maybe one, maybe two fights in general, whether they won or lost. So it's like usually that was kind of how that would start. And more than likely, you're probably going to go through 3 opponents before you finally add somebody. Because, you know, a lot of people do it and then they back out. You know, things like that.
Oh, okay.
You have
there's just a lot of kind of bullshit.
Well, yeah, a lot of bullshit that goes on you got to deal with, and you kind of got to sift through that shit pile a little bit. And like, oh, I'll find this good golden turd, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
But eventually, you know, if you get through that, you push through that, still no money, but you're getting that name out there. So you're marketing yourself, you're branding yourself. Like some people, you know, they would get their t-shirts made for themselves as an amateur, which, you know, pretty cool. That's a good way to get, you know, they try to find sponsors, things like that. I usually just, you know, all I did was just try to find a fight, show up, make weight, do all that, put on a show. It was usually kind of what I would do. And, you know, I finished my amateur career 9-2, and I won 2 titles for one for caged aggression at 170 and one for true rev at 170. I got to fight in Kentucky.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to fight in Kentucky. I fought for a title there. I lost a 5-round war. It was a pretty good fight still. And, you know, a lot of that experience definitely helped. So, I mean.
So your amateur record was 9-2.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you are like fighting, so basically you're fighting, and then after you have enough fights, you get to contend for a title fight, or how does that work? Sorry, I know that's like
that's a good question, because like because it's tough too, because like amateurs is amateurs, so it's like amateurs aren't really getting paid. You know, they might get paid more than likely their ticket sales, essentially. You get 20% of the tickets you sold.
Gotcha.
Like, that's usually how that would go.
So there's marketing at every level.
Yeah.
Of fighting.
Yeah, but usually at that, the promoter's probably going to try to make their bang for their buck more likely.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But they want you to be able to sell the tickets so people come to the show, so that there's more eyes, obviously social media, blah, 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 all that.
Gotcha.
So, like, if you got a big following or a big crowd, that's a pretty good way to kind of jump up through the amateurs. And obviously, I got a pretty big supporting cast, and, back in Manchester, and hopefully to add a couple more here.
Yeah.
And
no doubt.
So, like, those people, they help more than you would think. And the marketing, there's obviously, you're still building up for that. But, like, trying to get through those first 3-4 fights, maybe a little rough. Eventually, once you get there, your following gets a little bigger. Even if your following's not getting that big, but you're still winning and you're doing it excitingly, like, people are going to want you. Like, you could maybe win one fight as an amateur, depending on what promotion it is. And they're like, oh, they saw you won one fight and you won in like 19 seconds by a knockout in round 1.
So it's exciting.
So they're like, hey, you want to fight for this title, But it's your only 1-0 as an amateur. And that guy you fight might be like 3-1 or 3-0. But you know what I mean? It's not like, it's nowhere like the pros where it's like, it's a lot more serious now. Where it's like your record counts. Like if you get that one loss on your record as a pro, that could set you back. Yeah. So it's like things like that where it's an amateur, you're really just using that aspect to try and learn your ways for the pro.
Okay.
So
let's talk a little bit about your first couple fights. So you're obviously at some point you got to commit and do this career, right?
Yeah.
And so you go through the first fight. Is there any doubts about going into that first fight? Let's say I'm assuming you won the first one.
Yep.
Okay. So at that point you're in the fight, you won the first one. Is this now the moment where you're like, okay, I want to get into this shit? Or did it take a couple, or like how did that kind of?
Yeah, it was more so like I already knew something I kind of wanted to do or try, but definitely having that first fight and then having it go the way it did. I look at that fight now and it's just crazy to see how awful the footwork and everything was. It definitely looks like sloppy amateur work. Yeah, definitely.
Trust me, the first podcast I did was, I didn't even put it out. It was that bad. So. You got to start somewhere.
Right? And just like with the audio too, like, you got it on film. So it's like, you can look at that and now you're like, oh, obviously I worked on this. But like still, my last fight, there's still film on it. When you look at it, like, oh, I still got work to do, things like that. So that's the beauty of that. But, it definitely was already known that I was like, yeah, I kind of want to do this. And then that first fight definitely helped reestablish, like, I'm okay. I can do this. Because I always thought of myself as a little bitch growing up. Like, I never really wanted to get into fights and stuff. I never wanted to do that. I'm not a big fan of confrontation. Like, I hold a lot of stuff in. Like, I don't let my anger just explode. Yeah. And honestly, I thank martial arts for that, because a big thing is, like, and even in general warfare, I'm sure, what was that guy? The one guy that wrote the book or whatever, I don't remember. But usually in warfare, if you let your emotions dictate how things are going to go, there's a good chance you're probably going to lose. Because emotions don't always lead to the most logical and strategic way of thinking. Okay. The emotions are dependent on what you're feeling and wanting in that moment too, especially anger or any more so like negative cognition of an emotion would be the idea. Because you're more prone to act impulsively in those moments. Yeah. Instead of, okay, there's a simple step process here I could just go through and it'll be a lot quicker, instead of raging bull in a china shop idea. You know what I mean? Right. So that's why, like, I growing up, I was always like that. Like, people got my face. I never want to go, no, I was always like, all right, buddy, whatever. It's whatever. It's not really that big of a deal, I guess. Right. Whatever. Things like that. Actually, speaking of that one time, a good example of it was way back in the day when I was a little rascal. I was at a party. I don't remember where exactly, but I was with Ryan Becker, and we found Jesse Green later through this night. Obviously, we were drinking, and the cops showed up. We all ran into some fields, and that's where we found Jesse Green later on. He was obviously doing the same thing because we all dispersed. And we found some horses. We were petting them and all this, blah, blah, blah. Well, Ryan, being the dummy he is, when we try to make our way back, the cop's still there, and he yells, something stupid because we're far away and they're not going to get us. And then 20 minutes later, we finally all mingled back, and the cops had left. One guy was very mad, right? The guy that owned the property and everything was very mad that somebody from that general direction of where we were yelled and almost got them into more trouble. So when we finally came back, he bull rushed all three of us. And, like I'm saying, I'm a guy that didn't really like confrontation. So I, kind of wouldn't say cower, more so as think, like, how can I, how can we get past this without having to do anything really dumb? Yeah. Because it's like, it was kind of our fault. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, and I'm with the idiot that did it, but he's also my friend at the time. And I don't know. Okay. So he's coming, and, eventually I do this whole awesome scenario of I talked the guy out of, like, it could have been anybody, like, you don't know who it was, like, we were all blah blah blah. He believed it. We were out. We were scot free. And then my cousin Sean Knipper comes over. It was really funny when you guys yelled over there. And it's like straight out of a movie too, because this guy looks, puts his head down, jumps his fence to the other side of us, and starts to bull rush Ryan. Like I said, I'm not a guy for confrontation. So at first, and I was only still like, probably 19, 20 at the time. So I still wasn't quite, blah, 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 blah. I was actually stunned because, like, I had us out of this, and now this all happens.
Right.
And, that's one of those moments, too. Sometimes it's like, if I would have been a little more, and that's sometimes why it's kind of bad. If I was a little more aggressive in that situation, like, could have handled it right then and there, and nothing would have got escalated in a sense. Like, all right, you want to duke it out, then let's just we'll just duke it out. Like, That's something I could have also been, but that's not, it's not me. Right. So that's why it's kind of crazy. It's like I jump in there. I'm like, oh, let's do this fist fight. You know what I mean?
Right. That's not your natural.
And I think it's because, like, if I, in the back of my head, I was always kind of like, I could probably seriously hurt somebody.
Right.
And then I could get sued. Things like that. Like, it can become a huge thing instead of just trying to deflect it. And honestly, the main point usually of taking martial arts isn't honestly the competition. Obviously, that's a big thing. Like, just high school sports, they try to do the whole family and all this thing, but you get replaced every 4 years anyway. Right. In high school. But like the same concept is still there of like it's kind of like a club, like in a sense, sports club, whatever. It's a gym, you're a part of it, and the ability to have that is always great too. So it's just crazy that something like that would happen, and because of it, I can just deflect it because of the martial arts. But also, I noticed because of my own traits, there's times where it's like, I should have been that. So that's why I always thought, I was kind of a bitch growing up. Sure. And I felt like it was something I needed to do to prove to myself, like, hey, you're not necessarily a bitch, man. Like, just because you back down from these fights outside of here, and you don't want to beat up this random drunk guy because, it was kind of your fault, but like, a self-defense type of moment where I decide not to actually instigate on trying to punch. Like, I thought in that moment, not with anger or anything like that. It was more like, thinking through this. Well, luckily, Sean jumped the fence at basically the same time Saul was about to happen because he knew he messed up, tackled the guy, and that was it. That was all that. So nothing got too far, but it's like, moments like that, I think I learned from in a sense of, picking your battles.
Right.
And I look at it now, that's kind of what I learned, but still growing up, like I still had that same issue of like, kind of just wanted to take that lesser route of there's no sense in doing this. Because to me, it was like, I actually trained.
Right.
So like I have the ability to essentially maybe get out any issues I have while training. Right. So it's like, I don't have that pent up anger and everything like some people usually sometimes would. So therefore, thinking with the emotion and anger in some moments, do way more harm than good.
Right. Well, and to the point now where you have this experience, how badly things can go.
Exactly.
If that is all for what, right?
All for somewhere a miscommunication happened between Party A and Party B. And Party C, D, and E all have their own story.
Right.
And nobody knows exactly what happened except Party A and Party B.
Right.
So if Party A and Party B can't solve that and they want to listen to 2 different opinions, 3 different opinions, something gets skewed and misconception happens because Party A and Party B didn't want to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And that's why, a lot of bar issues, obviously, more so, or even, anywhere, conference. The idea of bumping into somebody, you're kind of drunk, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it was your fault, or it was my fault. Some people, they don't really do that. Like, oh, obviously now it's more common of just, oh, sorry, they're off on their own. But some people still have that because they're looking for a reason, usually because they're impulsive. They act on anger. They had a bad day, so something's going to happen. And I'm not going to lie. I have some days like that, if I'm having a bad day. And
everyone does.
Yeah, you stub a toe, you just want to take it out on the damn couch. You're like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, things like that. So, it's just helpful in general to have the martial arts throughout kind of the whole life to be able to dictate moments of when I can or can't. Because there's times where I do just give in because I know I can, like for that moment. Like, I know I can just kind of rage out here.
That's beautiful.
Exactly.
I love that. That's a good outlet.
Yeah. And it's not like I'm trying to hurt my teammates either. It's just like, I was just like, it comes that skill thing too, but you're exerting yourself. Like when you lift, like if you would lift and you get to that moment when you're lifting, like, I feel better. I feel good. Like you're productive. You're endorphins.
You work it out of your system.
Exactly.
And then you can get back to calmness.
And then that's where that logical thinking comes from. But you keep all that pent up sometimes, and that's when
problem.
That's when you don't have as much control, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, going back to so the first couple fights you have, you're winning, you're exerting this, you're kind of getting a feel for things. So it seems like that was really confirmation to say, hey, I've proved it to myself at this point.
Yep.
Now let's try to take this potential all the way and see where we can take it. You know?
Yeah, that went good. I went 3-0 first, and then I fought a guy named Tadion Sweet P Askew, and he ended up beating me in the second round by a TKO finish.
Gotcha.
And it was a good fight. He was a good wrestler, very very flexible hips, very good. The first round essentially, it kind of we were. Once again, it looked pretty amateurish in the striking wise, but we eventually kind of got on the ground. I was in his guard, so I was on top of him in between his legs, basically missionary style.
Gotcha.
And as I'm sitting there, I'm trying to work the head and then the body, and then he tries throwing up an arm bar. I get out of it, and then it's coming down towards the end of the round, and I'm playing that game. This was a very big learning moment for me. I'm playing that game of my face is close enough for him to take his feet and kick up. So I'm playing this game, and next thing I know, boom! Right, and I fall back into the cage, go like this, come back, and I'm kind of like this, and then the bell goes off. Ooh. So yeah, so I had to go to my corner, dinged, and I still didn't recover all the way by the time the second round started. But I came out, like trying to do all that. We got tangled up again. He got by the cage, and he kind of crawled on my back. He got a real good rear naked set in, but I fought my way out of that only to get flattened out. And then finally, his corner's like, just hit him! Because like I said, he had strong hips, and I couldn't get up because he was so well at going in. And this was during the COVID year, so honestly, I wasn't training as hard as I should have been for a fight because, you didn't think you were going to get one at that time.
Yeah.
And, I got it, and eventually, that's kind of what happened. But that was also one because that was my first loss now, now I'm 3-1. And whenever I play video games, I make sure I go undefeated. Otherwise, I restart the game.
That's right. What a great metaphor for life, though, is that you learn all these big and impactful moments in those losses. That's actually when I stopped just playing every game. And if I lost in video games. But anyway, the concept still remains the same. It's like it was a very big learning moment because now you have film once again. You know how you lost. You know what went wrong. Yeah. And now it's really truly a moment once again of the mental aspect of like, hey, you just lost, you got dinged, you got rocked quite a bit, you took some punches, and then my coach Eddie Davis, he sat down right next to me, and I was crying, man, because I'm like I said, little bitch. And in those moments, I'm thinking, man, I'm not as tough as I thought, man. I can't do it like this, blah blah blah. It's like, but in the back of my head, it's still like, God, that was such a rush. That was fun. I loved it. Like I love the adrenaline of it all. But in the front part, obviously, because I lost, I'm dying. And Eddie was like, is this something you really want to do? That's a great question.
Yeah. He's like, is this something you truly want to do? Because after I lost, he right away just brought me in the back, let me sit down for a couple of minutes, and then he asked the question. He didn't let anybody talk to me, nothing. Sat me down, and we just sat there. And that's when he asked, and I was like, yeah. Because after I had those minutes, I was like, I could have won. I had the opportunities; they were there, and I made that little mistake, even at an amateur level. My fourth fight, I made an amateur mistake. I should know how to do better, but in that moment, because I didn't have that experience, I didn't.
Right.
So now it's like, okay, I can learn from that, and that, the evolution started taking off. And I took a fight later on with CJ Schreiner, and he was, I think he was 2-0 at the time, 2-0 or 3-1, something like that. He was 2-0, and he was coming off some pretty good wins too, and he was a good striker. And I haven't really been tested striking yet because I won all my fights in the first round, or I lost that last fight. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I'll take this. I was probably like 210 pounds at the time, and it was at 170.
Holy shit!
Yeah, took that fight. I think it was like 4 months on notice. So I was like, all right, cool. Got all the way down there, and boy, it was a pretty good fight. It was a fun fight. That's on a lot of my fights are on YouTube, by the way. So if anybody wants to go watch them,
let's make sure we plug that at the very
end. All right,
end.
okay. Just want to make sure they are fun to watch. I have some good ones.
Yeah.
And we had a good striking battle the first round. Yeah, I think he definitely won that first round. And then on the second round, I basically just was able to get him down finally and do a lot of good work inside his guard, and I won that round. Then the third round swayed my way, I think, definitely because he was starting to get tired. And like I said, I see those moments, and I feel like, okay.
So he's gassed a little bit.
He's just gassing just a bit. He's still got some power to him, and, I don't want to – and that's one thing that's always been consistent about me is I'm not trying to go too far into something like that. Because I don't want to, go in and then get clipped because I was thinking, better just go. So, yeah. So it was a good fight, and, I won that. That was a good rebound fight. And then after that, won a couple more. Then I lost in Kentucky in that title fight, and then I rebounded and won like 4 more fights. Yeah, I fought Gavin Brown, Damien Hoback, and then Derek Minch just recently, and those all accumulated wins. First round, and first round win.
That's awesome, man.
And then Derek Minch and I went all 5 rounds for a title, and those were 3 minutes. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
But what's so cool though is like it seemed like every time you had a little bit of a setback, there was this motivation that was like, okay, we're humbled a little bit, but we have this hunger of like, I still want to get in this thing and keep getting better and keep getting better. And I mean, now I'm sure you're looking back at your first couple fights like, jeepers creepers, I didn't know a damn thing. You know?
Like I suck.
Yeah, but it's so great though that you had that growth, fight to fight.
And honestly, becoming a dad definitely kind of helps too, because I know, dad's strength is real. I feel like sometimes, because like I competed at a few jiu-jitsu tournaments here and there, and carrying something around quite a few times. Like when I got a hold of somebody, you can just feel that little extra, like I gotta keep holding on just a little longer. I don't want you to fall. You know what I mean? Things like that. So that's nice to have too, because then you think too, like. Like I said, I thought I was a bitch growing up all the time. So now I don't have to prove it to myself anymore. Now I just got to prove it to my daughters and my wife. Hey, I'm not a bitch.
Yeah, I think they don't think that you're a bitch after you've been fighting. Yeah. Amateur and professionally.
It's different, man. Fighting in a cage against somebody that wants to kill you is different. It's hard to fight against somebody that doesn't want to kill you and just wants the best for you.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong there.
That's way more of a psychological.
Yes, way more of a psychological battle.
Yeah.
Not one you always win.
So as far as professional fighting, that you have that opportunity now, right? As far as
so I'll be making my pro debut October 11th. It'll be a Friday night. It'll be in Davenport for Caged Aggression.
Gotcha.
And tickets are on nitrotickets.com, I believe.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put that in the cliff notes as well too. But how did you find this guy? This guy find you, or how did you guys get this? How did you get that pro opportunity?
Well, I had my last amateur fight against Derek Mitch for Caged Aggression, and I won their 170-pound title. And I even asked the guy, like, hey, I'm planning on making a pro debut after this fight, especially if it goes well. I think I'd be ready. Are you okay offering a title shot to a guy? Like, if I were to win, basically just vacate it again. Like, are you okay with that? Because he just had another guy basically do the same thing. And he's like, the fact that you even mentioned that means you can just keep the belt. So I was like, all right, cool. He thought it was pretty nice and respectable. But yeah, so he loved working with me, and I won that fight because I'm known as a jiu-jitsu guy. Well, for 5 rounds, I basically struck, and we traded. Like, it was a bloody fight. It was pretty fun. A lot of bloody shots, flying everywhere, body shots, everything. It was fun.
Damn.
And more so that guy. But he obviously liked the performance. So then when I said, hey, would I be able to make a pro debut? He's, I'm all about, making history, having, doing people's first, because it'd be my first pro fight. So,
yeah.
So he was down for it, and we got her set up.
Wow.
So I got
congratulations on that, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you have your first amateur fight? Well, how old are you?
24.
24. So it's taking you, and how old are you now?
I'm 30.
Okay, so it's taking you 6 years to make that pro debut.
Yeah, you could say it probably could have happened sooner, but life happens. So, and once again, to kind of throw this out there, it's like earlier on, it was more of kind of like a side thing or a hobby, because I do all the hog farming. So
right.
A lot of times, there's times I don't get to train like maybe a day or 2 in a row even. So it's like I try to make sure I always get at least 3 to 4 throughout the week in general. But there's some days I might miss a couple, or I might miss 2 in a row, and then I'm back for 2 days and I'm gone for a day, things like that. And so, for a while, it was just try to get it in when I can. That's why, being an amateur. But now, having a family and stuff, it's, I'd like to kind of, it's kind of awful as it might sound. It's like, I want to be able to obviously do good, but I also, I want to try making some money off of it, because, I've basically been involved with combat sports in a sense, judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, anything combat sports related, since I was 10.
Wow.
So it's like, now that I'm 30, it's like, it'd be nice to get a little payout from the thing, right?
That, or you're reaching the mountaintop as far as just that journey too.
Yeah, exactly. Because you never know what can happen. I might hit a good spot and just rise and take off, or maybe I don't, but I'm still able to make some money, and at the same time I put on good shows. People, because if you can sell tickets, people are gonna want you around at least. You know what I mean? Because that means the promotion will get paid, and just in general, staff, whatever, everybody gets paid. And then you get your fair share. Honestly, preferably, yes, I want to win, and I want to do all that, but I also want to be able to provide, for my family and everything like that. And it's just, it's just another thing that I can try to do to help with that. Because it's not like I'm horrible at it.
Well, clearly not. Yeah. The other thing, though, I think that is important to point out is that sometimes we, as humans, we want things so fast. Oh, yeah. And when we want it fast, we don't learn the necessary lessons to get there. Yeah. So I think even though, let's say, it's taking you this long, and I say that very loosely, of course, because it is what it is, that those 11 fights would have made you so much more well-rounded had you tried to make your pro debut after a third fight or a fourth fight.
Yeah, exactly.
That experience is exponentially beneficial.
Very much so, because there's some guys that, which credit to them, because you think about it, like we say, and as each generation goes on, the skill level should be getting better. But there's some guys that are 22 that fought in the amateurs, or actually, there's a pretty good example right now. There's I don't know him too well or anything, but there's a guy named Max Starry. I believe he trains with a Ronin Fitness somewhere, and I want to say El Clara, maybe in Wisconsin. They're a Jiu Jitsu MMA gym, and they compete at that Subspectrum tournament in Des Moines. They do very well. Well, Max Starry, I think, is like 16 or 17.
Wow.
And he's able to do the MMA circuit at that age across the world. And he's been doing very good. Very good. So it's like, that obviously he's an amateur. He can't make it a pro debut till 18, but that's something that, if he's been already doing it for 4 years and he's, 16, he started at 12, that's how crazy this gets. Like kids starting at 4, 6, ages like that doing all this. By the time they hit 16, 18, they can already have a huge brand name and everything like that.
Right.
And some of them, they fight the amateur fights like, you're kind of supposed to essentially. And then, I'm pretty sure you have to have at least 1 or 2 amateur fights before you can even think about going pro. And most, or at least some, I think, athletic commissions in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was very, good to have that experience of those 11 fights. But at the same time, with the ability of starting when I was 10, it would have been very ideal to try and start when I was 18.
Right.
Like we were saying, obviously, life just happens. Things don't go as planned, a lot of setbacks. So that's why, even going now, it's still something that, I'm doing it.
Yes.
I'm doing it
right now. That's what's most cool. Yeah, because you can always think back to, I wish I would have done this or I wish I would have done that. Yeah. But what's most important is
right now
your opportunity, in October to go in there and I'm just going to manifest this right now. The Life with Nick podcast would get your first professional victory, man.
That's what
go in there and go in there. Now, I do have to ask on the walk-up music, are you going to use the Train Man again, or what's your
No. I asked Casey Klein if he wanted to try and make me a song. Nice. And I sent him some of my Spotify, and it does range from Barbie Girl to it's an old Punisher song from like a TV series or something. It's like a minute 43 or whatever, but it's kind of like in a tone of like old Western, very like I can hear what you're thinking, like things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like from Barbie Girl to something like that. It's like I got an array of things. Use it. See how you feel fit, if you want to come up with something.
Well, he is the magician at the end of the day. Yeah. That guy can mix and match and put things together, so that's exciting.
I'm pretty curious to see what he comes up with.
Yeah, he's a creative brain.
Yeah.
So I know we've been talking a lot about, fighting, your mental preparation, how everything comes to fruition, some of that stuff, and also the pro fight that you got coming up, which is super fucking exciting, man. But equally as hard challenge, you are now a father.
Yes.
Not just right now, but you are a father. And one thing we wanted to talk about is just how that's changed your perspective on life a little bit. So fighting is one thing, right? You're going in there, you're trying to tear a guy's head off or submit him or whatnot, but can't quite use that same strategy when you're being a dad.
Says who? Yeah. See, I also have a niece and a nephew. My niece is 3, my nephew's 2, and my daughter's 1. So, they're all right there, 1, 2, 3. As so having a little experience already with my niece and my nephew, it definitely has helped with my own daughter. And then I'm gonna have another daughter come at the end of around Thanksgiving, and it's definitely something to see because. Like I was telling you earlier in the day, seeing her, like, sometimes you get annoyed, you're trying to sleep, you got, your sleep schedule, and you're trying to do the best you can. Sometimes the teeth in it just sucks for them. But we have her little mattress. We have it down right by our bed on the floor, and she sleeps. We usually try having her sleep there throughout the whole night. Well, she's getting pretty big. She's already fairly tall for her age. And she rolls herself off her little mattress. She does it like once every night. And it's funny because sometimes she'll either get up, put herself back into the mattress, and go fall back asleep, or she'll try to walk in and like walk out of the room because she's a little dazed, like, well, what is going on? And other times, the last 2 nights, it's been great because she'll get up and put her hands and her little head on my wife's side of the bed, and it freaks her out so bad she literally jumps in the air. So it's pretty funny to see that, not gonna lie. And it adds a lot more joy for sure because you kind of remember when you were a kid, growing up, you see all that stuff, and then it's almost like you get to re-see it from now a different perspective because you know that joy at some point when you were a kid,
right?
And now you see them having that same joy or even more joy, more happiness, smiles, things like that. And it's just like, it definitely kind of melts you a bit. On Friday, I worked about 11 hours. I went to work about like 7:30. Started about 8. Probably didn't get home till almost 8. I had to power wash, do night chores, all that stuff. So it's like, I didn't see my wife and my daughter all day.
Yeah.
Daughter's basically already in bed, asleep, and you got to get home. You want to try to be a little quiet, and you're hungry and things like that. You still got to feed the dogs, things like that. So then, she woke up, and she was still tired, and she came out. So came right to me, and I picked her up and just let her sleep on my chest for another hour. And in that moment, it just feels so nice because you're like, wow, that actually isn't too bad. It's almost like kind of cool because I was an only child growing up. I didn't really have a sibling. My wife had a sibling, and so they basically had each other growing up. So they always got that person in a sense. And with me, I always, had kind of a single mom growing up. So her basically having to kind of play both roles sometimes, and eventually becoming a teenager, 12. Essentially, at that point, like, I was just kind of off on my own, doing a lot of my own stuff. You know what I mean? And obviously, my mom was trying to work and pay the bills, so it's like, all right, whatever. So now having a daughter, and the way I brought myself up after high school and during high school and all that, having a daughter now, it's kind of like, oh, it's way different now. You got like, okay, gotta right, kick to the Sacagaweas, but. It's actually, I actually kind of wanted a daughter.
That's good.
Yeah, I actually did want a daughter, and I was telling Faith that the entire time. I was like, it's going to be a girl. Well, we actually only have, I think, two or three cousins that are girls in my family. Otherwise, the rest are boys. There's like 10 or 12, 11 of us, something like that. So I am now the only one that has a daughter, and now we have another one. So it's like,
oh my god,
so yeah. So it's like. I knew this was coming. I knew this was going to happen.
Kind of planned it in some ways.
Yeah. Kind of manifested it, I guess you could say. It's like, I deserve this. But, it's really sweet because, just the way they still take after you, and then they take after your wife, and then they now have their own little personality they get out of it. So it's really cool to see now because she's starting to kind of wave. Hey, she's starting to get some words formed. She got her 2 front teeth already for Christmas. Well, 2 bottom ones. She got one kind of right in the top coming through. So, her night's a little rough, but like it's every moment that you see that like a smile, and like I know it's pretty cliche, but when you see that smile, you're honestly just kind of you melt. You're like,
yeah,
wow. You always hear about it, and you're like, whatever. They see it, and you're just like, okay, you're pretty cute. Yeah,
and you created them, so
yeah, I know
that other layer of
so it's like I'm awesome.
I'm awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, she's definitely a very cute baby, and I'm Sailor. That's our soon-to-be when she comes down Thanksgiving. Is I had to fight Faith for the name. Comes from Sailor Moon. It's an anime or a manga from Japan a while ago. Never watched the show, but what, we both did like the name Sailor, so that's just I was like, yeah, Sailor Moon, one of the best anime characters of all time. That's what we need.
That's what we need, baby.
So we settled on that. So that'll be interesting because honestly, I get the opportunity because I a little bit of a nerd, so like anime and manga and cartoons, like a lot of that stuff kind of shaped a lot of me, I think. So I get the opportunity, when Sailor gets older a little bit, to now show her Sailor Moon because I've never actually even watched it. I just know about it.
So you're both watching it in real time.
So yeah, so hopefully when she gets a little older to understand some of it, we'll be able to watch it together and learn it. I mean, it's from the 80s, so we'll see how it holds up. And it's pretty girly in a sense, but like sometimes with Sutton, when she was up in her crib before she got way too tall and was about to pull herself out of it, she would watch Dragon Ball, which is before Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super that all these kids see now. And honestly, I never actually watched all of Dragon Ball, but I watched up to a certain point. And like right now, when she goes to bed, Before, sometimes I'd watch that with her. And when she'd fall asleep, I'd still just keep it propped up, going like this, just patting her on the back and just watching it till the end of the episode or something. Other nights I'd just be, well, I'm tired too. So, but it's pretty cool to, I can do that with them now because, like I said, I was a single child. So, I really just got to do all that stuff myself.
Right.
Which, and Faith doesn't really care for anime or manga, but so it makes sense. Not many people do. So it's like, all right, well, you're going to have to watch it now, buddy, because you can't run away yet. But like, there's times where like I had it on and she would actually just sit there quietly, watch it and fall asleep. So it's like, hopefully that's something she'll get interested in. That'd be cool. Otherwise, you always have that aspect of, I'm going to let you grow into what you like to see, things like that. But hopefully I can have some influence in there.
Yeah. Well, I think you do. And what would you say has been your biggest lesson learned as a parent? I know there's a lot of them probably, but I'm always curious about that.
I think the biggest piece of information that I could take away from everything is don't make noises or don't project something you have yourself onto them.
Oh, wow.
So like if they fell and from an outside perspective, you're like, it wasn't that bad of a fall. But with babies, sometimes, especially when they're just starting to walk, they're like giraffes. They're everywhere. So it's like, they're trying to get their legs behind them, trying to squat. They might fall a little awkwardly. They might do the splits or something. But like, you can't go, you can't do that because then in their eyes, they're like, oh, something. It's a negative cognition, right? So it's kind of like, oh, okay, and then they cry because it's like, oh, that must be bad, like that. So now if they start falling all the time, even if you're not making that noise, or you still kind of make it here and there, like in their head, it's going to be associated. Every time they fall, it's bad. You can't be making the noises. And there's, Faith's pretty good at it. She doesn't really make noise. Sometimes there are times where she might misjudge a fall and she makes it, but like she's real quick to correct herself. Like, as soon as you make it, like just to kind of like tighten back up real quick, and then just be like, oh, you're okay. And then, because they still have that delayed reaction of thinking, was it that bad or not? Because we don't make that noise all the time. So even if we do now, like, we don't make the noise more often than we do make the noise. So it really helps with them understanding, okay, it wasn't that bad. Kind of toughen them up a little bit, But like, there's times she'll run into something and bump her head really good. And I'll just stare at her, and she'll stare at me. She's like, should I cry about this? Should I not? And I just stare at her like, you're fine. And so she won't cry. She'll have a big red mark, but she won't cry. So it's like, I think that's very helpful too, because now like it kind of comes down to that emotions thing again, which, and sometimes
how you're handling your emotions is what you're saying.
It kind of, But there are moments like whether you make a noise or not, like if they cry, then that definitely should let you know as the parent, like, okay, that one actually, that struck something. Like if they didn't look at you and kind of like freeze and be like, oh, should I cry or not? Because if they cry after that, like they didn't cry, but they looked at you and then you didn't do anything, but then they cry, well, then they might just be, trying to get attention or that bad, things like that. It's hard to kind of pick and choose, but if they cry right away, more often than not, you should probably attend to them and not just be like, well, you should still be like, oh, you're right. But you still don't need to like kind of freak out, but you should definitely be a little more like, oh, okay, that probably actually hurt. Because there's times I won't go to her if, she falls or something. Like one time she grabbed a Capri Sun in Faith's hands and she was just squirting it everywhere. Had a gorilla grip on that bad boy. Squirting it Faith. Faith's like, no, stop, trying to get it away from her. Well, she slipped on some of the Capri Sun, not Faith, Sutton did, and she fell face first onto the floor.
Oh.
Right? So first, we were kind of like, hey, you're fine. We didn't gasp or anything because she's being a little dick about it. But anyway, it's like, because we kind of try to do that. We don't want to show that like, oh, it's really bad. Well, she fell, and we're like, oh, you're fine. Get up. And turns out she accidentally, with her new teeth, she accidentally bumped her lip, and she kind of bit it, so she's bleeding. And it was the first time either one of us have seen her bleed. It was like just a little thick, little drop on the floor, quick, and I held my composure a little more. On the inside, I was kind of, oh shit. Yeah. But Faith was definitely like, oh my gosh, she's bleeding, like, which very understandable reaction. First time ever seeing your baby bleed, and she obviously was letting out hell's door screams. So it's just like, oh crap, in my head, because then you're like, oh, this is real. Oh boy, okay, you're all right, buddy. Oh my god, what do we do? What do we do? You like forget almost everything you would normally do in a moment like that with something because you're like, oh my god, you actually, this is real. It's like, I don't know if you ever watched The Office, but it's like with Michael Scott. Oh my god, this is not a drill, everybody. You know what I mean? So, that I think the biggest thing I could take away from that is just you just got to know you're in charge essentially. So it's like even with kind of that. You're in charge of how they might act or react to something that happens to them.
Gotcha. So you're almost like a point of reference for them.
Yes.
So then they're like, hey, how should I feel or what should I do or, what have you.
And gotcha. I mean, I'm pretty well all on the, because like I said, I was an only child, so I'm pretty well on the tough it up, buddy.
Yeah. Well, and with fighting as well, too. I mean, there's a certain level with that. Now that you have had the chance to be a parent for a little bit, has that impacted your motivation as a fighter? Like, do you feel like you have more purpose now? And
definitely. Because not even just as far as the MMA aspect, like jiu-jitsu, like, the thanks to the CGI over the weekend with people winning $1 million, like there's a good chance, like, by the time she's old enough, like, there might be an opportunity for her if she decides to go that route. You know what I mean? Sure, if she decides, like, I want to do jiu-jitsu, like, I want to go this route, or, she wanted to be a gymnast, or, she wanted to wrestle, anything, basketball, doesn't matter. Obviously, you're going to support them through that decision. And I'm lucky enough to, like, I wasn't a great basketball player. I play rec league. I do all right, I guess. But, like, I understand the little things about basketball because, you see videos, you watch videos, right. And just being a coach in general, you should kind of know how to look at something, break it down a bit, and at least pass off a general idea of it. To where now when they actually have the real coaches in the sport, you just let them coach. There's essentially what, perfect world ideal. So with that being said, the motivation definitely helps because now I got to be a role model to like we're saying being that leader in charge. Now she sees how I react to something like that. So like if I got, brutally knocked out sometime in the future and she saw that, it's like I would have to show her because that'd be a scary moment, for a kid to see. But like that happened to me. Granted, as a side effect, it happened to her or, my wife, but it happened to me in the sense now, if I show you my reaction of like, hey, it's all good, it's part of, it's blah, whatever, blah, 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 yada, yada, instead of, we got all real lucky with that one, blah, 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 things like that.
It's a really good way to teach a good life lesson.
Exactly. Like if I lose in jiu-jitsu and they see that, and I come off the mat and go, whoo, man, that was something, wasn't it? Instead of being all like kicking the dust and just, throwing the dirt and yelling at the ref or something like that because he screwed me. And just, at some point, things matter more than the actual match or fight or something like that. So the moments you would take from those, like you can learn from those as far as being a human or something like that. Because like there's always usually gonna be somebody better no matter what. There's eventually, even then, father time comes and collects everybody. So either at some point, you're gonna be on top of the world and then you're not. Like then the new crop comes in. And how you react and all that is how it's going to be. So hopefully by setting that example for them, like when she has those moments that come up now, like she knows to handle it more in a sense that, I guess not markets her, but like, presents her as like, that person that people want to be around in general too. Like not everybody wants to be around the person that's kicking the dirt around.
Well, and her point of reference for losing is watching dad do that honorably.
Yes, because he loses a lot.
Versus being a psychopath. And, because they always say, kids see action, not words.
Exactly.
And so if you're constantly showing them that's how they're supposed to respond.
Yeah. Don't let them fool you, though. Kids do understand and learn words very quickly. Our 3-year-old sometimes says things she probably shouldn't. But at the same time, like, kids, I've learned that for the 3 years that I decided to drop out after Kirkwood for a 2-year program. But I did take a psychology class for like youth development, and they said that your brain, it has like filing cabinets, right? So as you're getting older, there's a filing cabinet, and there's a shit ton, obviously. But like every little thing is a filing cabinet, and obviously every little thing that is part of that general filing cabinet gets in there. So like the old traditional, the stove is hot, don't touch it. You have 2 options: touch it or don't. Well, I'm going to touch it. Oh, wow, that was hot. No shit. I told you, right? But kids, they still have to go through some of those experiences sometimes, you know what I mean? So that's why, like, if something like that were to happen, they have that filing cabinet now. So, like, they touched it, it was hot, now it's in the filing cabinet. Now, whether your kid wants to be that kid that wants to be like, is it going to be hot again? You know what I mean?
Now we're just testing out common
Now,
sense.
yeah, now you're just testing out evolution, buddy. So therefore, like I told you once, it was hot. I'm not going to try stopping you the second time. If I should say it. The second time, yes, I'd still be like,
Sure.
oh, that's hot. Yeah.
You're not just leaving them out.
Yeah, I'm not just leaving you out to dry. But let's say the third or fourth time you come back and want to try that, you know, at some point, you're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, and I will say just in my own life, I mean, it takes a couple times to learn certain lessons.
That it does.
The hand on the stove was a quick one for me.
But
there are other lessons that it takes us a long time.
And that would boil down to, what you're saying about, like, because I hated losing on it. Like, I hated losing. Because, like I said, I played video games, and I'd make sure I was undefeated, which, on my part, was awful, obviously, because when I first started losing, obviously, in real life, you know, it sucked. Like, I was so hateful on myself. I hated it, and I was like, you know, this sucks. Like, I'm so bad. Like, why is this happening? Like, because in my head, I've built myself up wrongly, in a sense, through the video games of being perfect. Because that's how I always pictured. Like, I always wanted something like that. You know, undefeated and everything. Because everybody loves a winner.
Right.
But in you know, with times now, like, everybody loves somebody that they can just love. You know what I mean? Like, marketability wise, you know, people love Craig Jones because they think he's hilarious. They love watching him. They like seeing what he does. Sugar Sean, they like seeing his little skits, videos, and he actually does come to fight. Like, it's not like he's just putting all of his time into that stuff like that. So now with all that out there, having the kids be able to see that, you know, it's like they can start to use that too to now branch out. And the filing cabinets, it's like, okay, you know, with the stove thing, they learn more than now just that it's hot. It's like, okay, well, now that it's cold, like, eventually as they get older, they progress, well, is it on? Is this in? Is that on? Like, is this working? Is that, you know, things like, and that's all kind of into one filing cabinet in a sense. So, like, when they, you know, if they have tennis, let's say they're playing tennis, well, now they got their filing cabinet for tennis. Okay, when I do a backhand, am I doing it with my body or am I just using my arm? So if I just use my arm, this is messing up. Okay, filing cabinet here. If I'm using my whole body and then releasing, is, you know, filing cabinet. Okay.
Gotcha.
So they get all that.
So then, really, it's just this accumulation of experience. Yep. So then over time they can draw.
Yeah, just like as we were with kids. You know, you ride your bike, you fall down, you're like, oh, dang it. Okay.
But what is cool, and sorry to cut you off, but is like now as an adult seeing them go through that, it reminds you of the lessons that you still need to learn or relearn or go through. Yes,
definitely relearn or also try to reiterate. Yeah. It's like you want the best for them, and you know from your own experiences, it's like, you know, this, and right now, obviously, because you're the only one, so it's like, you know, you're trying to, and I always kind of just treat kids like sometimes I do adults, because it's just, you know, you talk to them like a normal person sometimes, you know, it's like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, hey, how are you? You know, things like that. But, you know, you do that, and to me, it's like, they see that, and they absorb it a little better and faster, because they're being treated, you know, with obviously love and care, because it's genuine in a sense, like, you know, and being with obviously with Sutton with her cousins, you know, since they're 2 and 3, she's also now able to take information from them that she sees happens with them and the choices they make, the decisions they make. Yes, exactly. And because I mean, she's not too far off from them, so it's like she sees that, and then she sees what they do and the reactions that cause, actions like that. And there's some that she mimics that, you know, we don't really want her to mimic, and then there's some that she mimics that, you know, that's good. So it's just like you're saying, those experiences are all going to come into one, and the reason I think it's just crazy to watch is because you're sitting here thinking, well, I already know all these experiences and stuff, kid. Because like you're saying, people just want things fast, and now it's like they want to fast track this out, because you know, time passes by mainly for everybody the same, except for places that are 6 hours ahead in the future somehow. I don't know how that works, but all right. But anyway, you know, time passes the same. Every day is 24 hours, you know. And she can only take in so much because the brain is still so small. But at the same time, it's, you know, it's got the potential for just learning more than I did. You know what I mean?
Right.
Granted, I wasn't super smart, so it doesn't matter. But at the same time, everything you give into them and then everything they do on their own now, it's crazy to watch. Because, like, there's some things I see her do, and it's just like, well, why would you? Oh, okay, well, I guess it works for you. I guess, whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to correct it. I guess it worked, whatever. Because there's times where it's like some parents are like, oh, no, don't do it that way. You know, you don't want to do it that way. I want you to do it this way. Well, so you want them to do it your way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're adventurous. They're learning still. Like, that's why that's why I'm saying, hey, if you want to touch that stove 3 or 4 more times after you just found out it was hot 2 times, like I will let you burn yourself 1 time at least to make you understand. Like, hey, don't be doing that.
Right.
But it's like, if you're going up the stairs or if you're going down the stairs, I'll use that as an example because Sutton's now trying to be able to. Normally she goes down on her belly and she gets down that way, which works. But now she wants to try to turn because she's able to walk and everything. She wants to try stepping down, and she's not quite ready for that. So it's like you watching that, and when she turns and stuff, you're kind of like, well, what do you do? You can't do that. But this is why they're so smart sometimes, is she'll be at a spot where she can like grab on and try to do it. She understands that. Like further up the staircase, she doesn't try that. She slides all the way down to the spot she knows, okay, I can grab this thing and try to start to come down. But you're still you're still not quite big enough for that to work. And there's one time I was watching her do it, and I was going to try to get over there to be like, hey, no, don't do that. And I was just like, fine. Let's see how your way goes. And she took 1 step down, and she was on just like those little poles, like whatever, standard little pole on the staircase. And she grabs it, and she like falls kind of like this. She's still holding on, so she doesn't fall all the way off. But then she's kind of like stuck there, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I'm just like, well, you'd think you'd learn, but I'm sure in 5 minutes when I get you out of there, you're going to think it's a game. You're going to go back and do it.
Exactly.
Because eventually it does become a game to them because they're like, oh, this is good. Because kids obviously love attention the most, right?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So it's like,
adults do too.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Everybody loves attention.
Yeah.
So therefore, but they're like still learning about the attention. Like, how can they get that attention? Especially that positive approval attention, right? So therefore, it's like, oh, you came over here finally and helped me and did it. Oh, okay, I'm going to do it again. Well, fine, do it again because I'm going to have to come over here and make sure you don't get hurt. You know what I mean? And it's like,
it's kind of an interesting concept, though.
Yeah, because like they're smart enough to understand obviously the very basics of stuff of like, I would say natural, normal human aspects, right? Obviously, like emotions are going to play a lot of different things and how they feel and all like that. But they have a brain, they have eyes, they've developed it enough now. She's a year, a couple months, like she's had experiences and everything, and she can almost talk. And by almost talk, I mean say hi completely clearly. But it's like you just see it that they're thinking. And they're not always doing smart thinking, but they're always thinking.
But there is a light on.
There is a light on.
In the process and everything.
And it's fun to see because you might catch them like thinking nobody's watching, and that's usually when it's the best because you can see them thinking, and you're just like, oh, what are you gonna do with that? What are you gonna try with that? Because you got to play that. You got to play that higher power role in a sense. It's like, do I give you the free will to do this, or do I go stop it right away because I know it's probably not going to end the way it should?
Yeah.
But I don't want to pick that route because now an experience gets taken away. A learning experience, an experience in general, just gets taken away because I took their ability to, in a sense, stop them from doing something I don't deem that they should be doing.
Right.
Granted, I still don't if I still don't think you should be doing that, I'm still going to let you experience that, whether it was right or wrong. Like, because the mistake you make, it's not fatal. It's anything. It's just like, oh, I stubbed my toe. You know what I mean? Things like that. So to watch them catch on to that and then see that you are watching finally, like, oh, nobody's watching. And then they're like, oh, well, you are watching. Well, then they take that moment to like, oh, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. So it's just crazy because she'll smile. Like, she'll like do that. Like, oh, stop, see me. And like, we make eye contact and she'll smile. And I'll be like, no, don't do what I think you're going to do. Just keep smiling and then just, here we go.
No fear, just gonna go do it anyway.
Yeah. Then it fails, and then you're just like, I told you. I told you.
Yeah, but they going back to your point on them trying to figure it out for themselves, that's where I think it is kind of cool though when you let that happen. Because when it goes well, then I'm sure you could probably see the whole circuit board be like, okay, they just figured out how to do that.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just like probably learning a new move in fighting. It's like when you fail at it, let's say 10 times, and then you get it on the 11th, it just clicks, and then all of a sudden it comes together.
You just keep doing it.
Yep, and then to the point where now, obviously, there's things you don't even think about doing. You just kind of go out and do it. Because
in general too, you think with just life, every day is basically, you follow a routine essentially. Your experiences come about, and every day, there's something new that can pop up and throw you out of routine, and you got to be able to take it in and adjust and adapt to it. And that's usually what kids are usually doing. They're they essentially have the routine, but obviously as they're getting older, more opportunities are presented to them as they grow, obviously, so they get that little curveball here and there, and then or some days, they get a lot of curveballs.
Right.
So, your whole life is basically just a lot of repetitive motion.
It is, with a little bit of sprinkle here and sprinkle there.
Yeah.
There was so this will probably be kind of our last little talking point here as far as the podcast goes, if that's cool, just as we're talking. But there's this concept that I was reading about that is called, this was the guy was like writing in the 1960s, so it's a little bit outdated, but just adaptive energy. How like when you go through something that's kind of difficult or something that tests you outside your comfort zone, you just get a little bit more confidence going back and doing it because you adapted through that. So I feel like for kids and with fighting as well, like every time you go through it, you're like, okay, I get a little bit more of that adaptive energy to keep going because, if it goes well, like you were saying, like you get that adrenaline rush. And you're like, I want to do that again.
Yeah. And actually, you mentioned it. Yeah. Because like before, a lot of people, sometimes they struggle with changing diapers. Obviously, it's no picnic or cakewalk. But like as that repetitive motion's going through, that adaptiveness, like they eventually understand, like, oh, okay, well, now I'm getting my diaper changed. Like, sometimes they'll just lay there and let it happen. Other times because they're kids, they still they want to push the limits. They want to push your boundaries. They want to know what they can get away with, things like that. So that's why sometimes, like, like you changed her diaper 2 times already today and she did nothing but the 3rd time. She's like, yeah, what if I just do this, and all that. And then you're wrestling a gator. So it's just like, why can't you just sit normally all the time?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fun.
Right. They're experimenting and testing you.
Yep.
Which is really funny.
Who knew they knew the scientific theory already?
Yeah, joke's on us.
Yeah, we're all dumb. The kids are smart. Yeah.
Well, just as we're wrapping up here, man, any other kind of thoughts on parenting or fighting that you want to share? I mean, we've had a really good conversation, and it's been awesome.
I guess as far as parenting goes, I can't really give too many tips. Everybody's going to have their own style. Everything's going to be different. But, I think the best thing to do is just kind of, you gotta let them kind of fail here and there, and then you gotta also kind of be able to pick them up when they fail. And sometimes you just gotta, let them just try things, let them do things, whether you like it or not. Like, if you don't like a certain food, you can't give it to them and go, yucky, you can't be doing that all the time. You gotta at least, if it's a food you don't like, you at least gotta give it to them, like, yummy. Yeah. And if you go to try it, you gotta do your best efforts to keep a straight face and go, yummy. Because you don't want to make them dislike things you don't dislike, because that's an opportunity they can miss out on. Like, my daughter loves bananas. I love bananas. Faith hates bananas.
Yeah.
And, Faith's not against giving her bananas, because Faith understands, if you like them, then you like them. Like,
right.
You're not going to not like them because I don't. So that's why it's very big to just kind of let kids be kids and let them grow up, because no matter how many times you're going to try drilling your ideas of what you thought growing up, all your experiences by the time you're 30, 40, whatever, into them, like, they still are going to have to go through that process you went through growing up no matter what. And then, honestly, that same idea can be passed down to fighting, too, or fighters. Like, there's generations ahead of you that did it, trialed through everything, blah, blah, blah. The blueprint, it's a little different because you can pick up a blueprint, run with it in fighting and be very successful. There's obviously blueprints, I guess, in parenting, too, but kids are all different. Fighters are all different. So, therefore, you got to come up with your own style, your own method to make it work for your cell, your group, your family, your gym, everything like that.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah. And to the point on as much as we want to, parent them, as much as we want to tell them our ideas, they're fresh clay. So they don't need to necessarily have what you think is the right answer every single waking moment. Eventually they're going to grow up and have their own opinion on things.
Exactly.
And so if you're teaching them the principles, that's going to be way better than just, hey, this is why we do things. It's because I did it, and that's why we do it. And it's like, well.
Yeah, you think, that's a good method because they're like clay. Yeah, that's very good because that's exactly how we would all be growing up. They have fresh, blank slate of clay. And that brings up a good point of how they'll have their own opinion later on, because it's like still even the same as adulthood. Like, you and I could watch, 2 guys paragliding right now, and one guy loses his glider and just falls, right? For all we know, it goes back to that point A, point B, C, D thing, blah, blah, blah. For all we know, point B came and cut it. It's attempted murder. It's like very, very scenarioized, but like we saw this, like this is attempted murder. Okay, but we wouldn't, how are we supposed to know that? Right. We saw the same thing, but now we might have different opinions. Like, oh, well, I saw this happen. Well, I saw this happen.
Right.
And it's crazy. We both saw the same thing, and we're going to have a different opinion on it. And that's how kids are going to be eventually. Like, they might see when they get older, but the way things are, by the time they're 8, they might have a completely different opinion than you do on spaghetti. And if they do, they can starve. I love spaghetti. But that's just how kids are,
It's a good thing to talk about, and I'm glad that we did that. There was a gal that I had on that she was talking more about motherhood specifically. So when you wanted to come in and talk about parenting, I thought it was a good opportunity from a male's perspective, and just also like how fighting kind of correlates with that. I think it's a good combination.
Throw that out there with the motherhood thing. The motherhood is definitely way different than the fatherhood, because the motherhood, you got to sit there with her for those 9-10 months of incubation.
Yeah.
So having a person inside you, I'm sure, is way different than me finally meeting them and then being able to hold them that way and stuff. Like this lady definitely took care of her for that long and everything like that. And they're still going to be connected. And now that they're it's a daughter and a mother, like they're going to be way more connected. Whether compared to, it doesn't really matter. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a father, if that lady had her in there for 10 months roughly, they're going to be way more connected than you and any child in general, just because from what I kind of see, the mama bear senses, they're there. They're like, they're always ready. Like they tend to be very, I'm definitely not overbearing. How do I want to put it? More watchful. More watchful.
They're super naturally instinctive.
Yes. To understand, like, hey, they might have the same philosophy or method, like, hey, try it out, figure out, blah, blah, blah. But they're usually more keen to, we probably shouldn't let them do that. Whereas the father might be like, that's kind of how I am. So yeah, I'll be all right. But face like, no, because the only one result from this is her getting hurt. It's like, oh yeah, but then she'll know what to do. It's like, really? And it's just like, yeah, you're right. You probably should just avoid the whole, because like if it's something that might make her really cry, then you should definitely probably step in and not let them learn that experience.
Sure.
Because sometimes that's why it's a fine line. Because sometimes it's a traumatic experience could erase that filing cabinet could be corrupted now for eternity because of one traumatic experience.
Well, and you're not going to be letting them walk into a bear.
No. Yeah. See. Yeah. You can't.
There's a threshold on everything.
Yeah. Everything's got a fine line. Yeah. You got to be able to tiptoe that line and understand it. That's the problem. It's just, like I said, everybody in every parenting way is going to be different, but everybody's got a fine line of their own idea to kind of go on. It's not like I'm going to send you to a lion's den and be like, all right, good luck, come back. Yeah, can't be doing that.
Yeah, but I do think that letting them fail and learn is still a good, productive means.
Within reason.
Within reason. Beautiful, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about all this stuff. And one more time, so where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook. I had an Instagram, but then my phone got busted, so now I have an older Instagram where I don't know anything about it, or not Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. Sorry, I don't use it as much.
No, that's okay.
But Instagram, you can find me just Spencer Oberbroeckling, BJJ. On YouTube, if you just look me up on YouTube, Spencer Oberbroeckling, there's a lot of my Jiu Jitsu matches. There's a lot of my MMA fights.
Okay. And
then obviously just on Facebook, you can find me Spencer Oberbroeckling.
Yeah, absolutely. And do me one favor, just because your last name is a little wicked, like my last name. Can you just spell the last name for Oberbroeckling. Beautiful. Yeah, for those that have interest in checking Spencer out, definitely go and do that. And I'll tell you what, man, as you come on the Life with Nick podcast, you got me as a fan to follow you along. So I'll help try to promote things as they come up. But
thank you.
Again, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. And for all the listeners, until next time.